Hey, Sea Dogs, it's Mr. O'Neill. I want to take a quick minute to go over some culture notes, and then I also want to go over some expectations for you with regard to taking notes while going over these slides. This is the way that we're really going to kind of like pass out information in class is through Google Slides, and then also I'm going to ask that you take notes using a Google Doc or something by hand. I'll get into more detail about that in a minute. So like, I don't know if you can see the slides over here, but sometimes, when we take notes, it's a big endeavor and we take a slideshow and we feel like it's important to write everything down. And we kind of have to break ourselves of that. We have to start looking for like specific important things. So every time I give y'all a slide show in the beginning, I'm going to kind of set some goals for us. So everybody today should be able to meet these goals. So this is going to help us as we go through and take our notes. So look, each day I kind of like set it out there for you. So like when we do history, economics, government, geography, it's going to be similar to this, and I'm going to pose you questions. So look, how will we meet the goals that Mr. O'Neill set on the last slide? This is like a big question that students have always asked me. I know Mr. O'Neill is going to put this stuff on the test, the quiz, or some kind of mini project or IB assessment or something like that. So like, how do I know what to write down? Do I just write it all? Do I memorize everything? Well, look, you're going to need to take notes on what's presented, but these are the questions that I kind of want to ask. And things that we talk about in class, those are the important things that we want to get in our notes. This is what we really want to have in our notes if Mr. O'Neill doesn't say it. This is what we want to put in there. But look, this is one way that I really like to take notes, and they're called Cornell notes. And in the real world, I would like us to do this by hand. I would like you to dissect your paper into 3 sections. You have one for questions, one's for notes, and at the end you summarize it. But you really do want to take the time to be organized. And even if you're doing this as a Google Doc or writing it by hand, I both suggest doing this. Always name, date, time, period, and then give it a title. So when you go back to study and you even have it up here, I would make this Andy's copy of Culture Cornell notes, either so like when it's in my Google Drive or it's in my notebook, I don't lose it. I know where it is. And Mr. O'Neill says, study your culture notes. You're like, okay, boom, I got it. I can go. So let's kind of talk about what culture is. Let's give it a definition. So culture is a way of life of a group of people. And there's lots of little things that make up culture that we all know, that all exist, that are all present, but sometimes that like we don't know about. So sometimes like we can look at like traditions and rituals as one. Like, in some cultures, it is considered respectful to make eye contact with someone, right? In other cultures, it's considered disrespectful. So they would look at the ground. So we can even like look at, they're like the same thing in one culture is completely different in another. And this is kind of what makes stuff cool. This is what makes it different. Culture is one of those things that like we can look and it's rich and it's strong and it's interesting, even though when we look at people and their possessions, they might look poor, but they're rich in culture. And that's kind of like how we choose to define things. I'm going to kind of give us another word because sometimes historians, sometimes teachers, we want to be mean and confusing to children and give the same thing many, many names. So like I'm being sarcastic, but we have to start expanding our vocabulary. And one way we'll do that is we're going to start calling it elements of culture. So an element of culture would be someone's language, their religion, kind of like unwritten rules, right? We kind of see those in society all the time, like opening doors for people or pulling out a chair or if someone sneezes. Those are kind of what we would consider like unwritten rules. Sports, games, like what culture is considered to be entertaining is different than others. Economic systems, types of government. Okay, like think about this, like how people interact with their environments. I have this thing called EDC, like everyday carries. So like think about it, like when you live in like a big city, it's like you take an umbrella with you because sometimes the climate can change quickly or the wind or, like think about what people carry in their pockets every day and how that differs depending on the culture you're in. Think about what are some things that like, what if you're going to the beach or if you're in the mountains, would you have the same things in your pocket? That's something I kind of think about. When we're a class, we're going to answer this question. and think about like what is the most important element or part of your culture. And I kind of have some different pictures representing it here, but in some cultures, people think they're pets. People say their religion. People say family. There's so many different answers to this, and I can't wait to hear yours. So let's look here. Like who, geez Louise, who studies this stuff? Like who actually takes the time to do this? And it's actually a really cool area of study, and it's called anthropology and anthropologist study. So an anthropologist is a scientist who studies cultures. They examine how origins, like human origins, and how humans have changed over time. So let's think about like how have humans changed over time or evolved? And this is something we kind of have to get away from is thinking of evolution as like a bad word because you have evolved as students since you've started at Piedmont. Could you have found all of your Zooms on time? Did you know how to submit a Google Doc through Canvas? Did you know how to make a copy of a Google Doc through Canvas, right? Evolution is just change over time. And sometimes people automatically jump to the theory of evolution, which we'll discuss, but I like to kind of do that side by side, other theories as well. So, you're responsible for knowing what an anthropologist was. We'll talk about sociologists later on, but they kind of study how societies differ. Next, you're going to want to watch these videos. You want to watch different cultures around the world, and then I have some videos of some gentlemen from Sudan that moved to the Americas. And what I want you to see is like in the video, kind of put yourselves in their shoes. Think about the things that are like common and everyday to us. It's like imagine if you went to a place and things like you didn't even see the bathroom that was the same as yours, or just things that are different. How would you adapt? How would you feel? And like, is our culture accepting to others? Do we come from a culture that puts a value on accepting others and welcoming others? So watch these videos. They kind of explain it a little bit better than I do, and try to answer these two questions in your notes. Now, we are done. This is the end of the slideshow, but now you need to go back and check your notes and make sure that you've answered these questions in there. Can you cite examples and define culture? Can you list different elements of your own in different cultures? Can you state what type of scientist studies culture? And explain how your own culture is unique in comparison to others. We touched on that, and we didn't touch on some of it. So this is kind of where you do need to go back to the beginning. This is where I like to start taking notes because I've already gone through the slideshow once. I know what questions are going to be asked of me. Now I can kind of start to do the information again. I'm going to make sure to watch the videos and email Mr. O'Neill any questions, and we're going to discuss this in class when I see you next. Questions, email them.